I would argue to have a thriving relationship, you need some community. You need maybe a great therapist or coach or a great resource, and other couples, who are walking the path and trying to practice some principles of conscious relationship.
Yeah, so I was trying to find some more podcasts on it. I've listened to the 3 that you did with Ben.
Okay. Yeah.
Evolving Man. And do you know what? I mean, I didn't research you beforehand. It kind of just happened very naturally. I don't overthink my guests. If I feel drawn to someone, or, obviously it's generally what I'm searching online, or, word of mouth is obviously great, but generally I get all my guests from little rabbit holes that I go down online. And I think it was someone pointed me onto Mark Groves. I watched one video of his, and then through him, you came up, and I was like, okay, interesting. I went down the kind of rabbit hole there, and I was like, okay, I didn't think too much. Don't overthink my guests, which is actually one thing I'm very content about. It's I've never not put out a conversation, so I must be doing something right there, I guess.
Okay. Well, I won't do anything to break your record today. Keep it going.
Keep talking about COVID. That'll break it.
Exactly.
Not that I wouldn't air it, but so that was the rabbit hole. But then since then, which was through maybe close to a month ago, but since then I've been doing a bit of diving into you even more, and the free podcast. So it's kind of shifted the whole, for me, intention of where I would love the conversation to go. I mean, it'll go wherever, and I'll not know what that is, but I guess the intention of what I want to talk to you about. Because your men's work stuff, initially it was all, you holding space for individuals, couples, and your relationship work and what you do for people in that space. But then hearing a lot about what you've been doing for a fair few years in the men's workspace, that just gets me going, man. It's just so exciting to talk to people about that. It's just a fire that's burning in me, and I want to just be as I intend to be, fully transparent with where I'm at. And sometimes that's hard, but I think one thing that will serve this conversation is to say that, and it'll be a bit of accountability. So I'm looking to launch. I am launching. Let's change that language. I am launching a men's local community here in the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to wait. So it should be out. It will be out if this podcast is out. So that's my accountability. But it's like, these questions come in. And I don't want to turn this into a coaching call, but it's, those things that pop up. It's like, am I ready? Who am I to do this in this posture? And you're just in it, and all those voices creep in. Am I charging too much? Like, lots of questions, lots of good practical questions for myself, but moving through that and how I do that is like where the gold is, I guess. It's how I can show up for that and be vulnerable in that space. That's going to allow me to hold that space for other people by doing that, I guess.
Well, I think a lot of people can relate to what you're saying there. This goal, this thing you want to be accountable for, this desire, this dream that you have, and you're set out to do it. And what you encounter, and all of us encounter, is our own resistance. There are real challenges in the world, and how do I solve this problem? But sometimes it's so easy to just get in our own way about it, and to find some reason not to, find some reason to say it's not good enough, or it's too much, or I'm not ready, and I think that's where the mindfulness practice and compassion and try to stay in the here and now and be where you are and take it, one step at a time. And if you get some feedback from the market that it's too expensive, because no one's signing up, okay, well, let's reevaluate. Exactly. But it's so quick to, I think, sometimes get in our own way. I can definitely relate to that. Even I made a commitment myself to publish more writing this year and be more present for the small following that I've got on Instagram, and show up there for some of the couples and clients that follow me, and really to practice my skill as a writer. And even in that process of deciding, okay, I got to pick a font and type it up and format it, it's like, oh, maybe it's, the color's not right, or maybe I should do it another way, or maybe I should be more creative, or, there's just so many things that come up, I think, really in pursuit of our creative expression and just being our authentic self. It's really an X-rated thing to do, to be yourself.
Yeah.
And for most of us in our family systems, and even as adults in society, sometimes to speak our opinion or, say clearly how we feel about things can be offensive to other people, or can be taken the wrong way, or not appreciated, or dismissed, or invalidated, and so on.
Or an
It's
opportunity to call someone out for something, or an opportunity to jump on someone when they're showing not, I don't want to say weakness, because it's not. Your weaknesses can be your strengths, but it's like perhaps someone when they're just being open and honest, which can it gets you in trouble at school. It's things that stay with you like that perhaps people that are looking for an opportunity to single you out or laugh at you. Or I had a thought on the call before. I was like, this thought just popped into my head. I was like, what color makes you more trustworthy? Like, what color jumper would make me more trustworthy? And I was like, as if I'm thinking that right now. Like, how hilarious is that thought's popped into my head?
Yeah. I think the answer is that might be a light blue of some kind.
Okay.
Statistically, you can look into it.
Black.
I believe it. I read light blue, but these things change, and when you get a set of data, it can be interpreted in many ways, as we're learning in this pandemic. But that's kind of an interesting thought you have, because you and me don't really have rapport. We don't know each other. And I think that's one of the things in men's work that is a real challenge for some guys, is sitting with other men in a circle or in a workshop or whatever the format might be, and noticing some of the competitive thoughts that you have about the other men, some of the hyper comparison that goes on about, could I maybe take this guy, or am I more financially successful than these guys, or where do I sit in terms of looks? Some of these unconscious kind of evaluations that we even
does
make.
Wearing a tie make me more vulnerable?
Sure. Yeah. And
in a fight.
And these are things that come up. It's like, can we trust each other? And I think that everyone, not just men, but everyone's got some wounding around that. And we've got things to work on, things to heal, and certainly growth opportunities as a result, because we've all been maybe there when we're being teased, or don't get invited, or we've experiences with bullying and all these things that go on in our lives that make us feel that people aren't always trustworthy, and people don't always have a sincere, no strings attached agenda. And that's something that men are working on together in certainly my community, and they will be absolutely in yours. It's an important part and one of the core fundamental themes of men's work.
Mm-hmm. Would you say awareness is the first step, or the predominant step to be self-aware of those thoughts?
Well, awareness is definitely the first step in many, many ways. I find myself saying that. I find myself remembering that, telling that to myself every step of the way. It's like, we can't really change anything if we're not aware of it. We can't really attack or solve a problem, or, you use the word weakness. When we have goals in life, or we're striving to get somewhere, we're often going to find out about a weakness that we have. Like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And we've got to figure out how. So we become aware of things on the journey forward. In our relationships, we become aware of things. And if you don't get involved in some kind of learning process, it could be you by yourself with a good book, but it's some kind of learning process or growth process. You're going to find that your life might be run by parts of your unconscious mind. The outcome of your reality here on this planet could be dictated by just the things that sit outside of your awareness that you never got a chance to look at. And so, I think that it's almost it's a cliche in personal development when we say phrases like this over and over again, but it really does seem true to me that, awareness is the first step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to go back to that point, because I think it's a really big point, especially in our modern day, or perhaps for, you know, forever, that trusting other men and how we can cultivate more trust for one another, and what do we have to heal, what wounds do we have to heal, what do we have to look back and try and understand. So where do you think, or in your work, that what's come up more, that trusting other men is actually really hard to do for people? I'm specifically talking about man to man here over.
Yeah, well, for me, you know, I think that I sometimes have a skeptical perspective in general. You know, I might be skeptical of authority, skeptical of the claims that people make about products. You know, I sort of have that mindset, maybe even cynical sometimes to my own detriment. And you know, that's my own path. My point is sitting in circle with other men, you can sort of doubt, you know, that someone's got real, true intentions, and that they mean what they say, that they're going to follow through, that they're the kind of person that has integrity, and that their actions match their words. So what's kind of required for me and all men that come into circle, and whether they're a leader or a member or there's their first day, is to start to get a sense. And if you got a good facilitator and a good leader there, they're going to be able to create a container that has a safe enough type situation. And that will allow people to explore aspects of their mind and give men a chance to, you know, find out, like, you know, let's find out, let's spend some weeks together here. Let's sit in circle enough that I can start to see, actually, I can trust these guys. These, you know, seem like trustworthy guys. They show up on time. They do what they say they're going to do. They're clear and direct, and they're not bullshitting me. And man, they make a declaration and they follow through on it. And so, you know, we can go deeper there in terms of what some of those elements are that build that safety and trust, but you can hear it just in that sort of consistency, that reliability, that follow through. And depending on obviously our childhood and our experiences in life, everyone has a different, you know, sense of trust in the world, sense of trust in people, a global sense of trust that, you know, everything's going to be okay. You know, it's going to work out. It's going to work out for me. And even if you're in the shit, even if you're in the, you know, dark age of your life, so to speak, or you're at rock bottom, you can still have a sense, you know, it's going to work out for me. And not everybody has that, which is really shaped by, you know, childhood experience. But for any man that comes into a group, they certainly can work on that. And it's going to be confronting because you're going to have to. It's going to come up in some way or another. Someone will let you down. Someone will say something that you think is BS, or there'll be a triggering character in there, you know, a big ego or someone you butt heads with. So there's no shortage of stuff to work on. And it's certainly an exciting thing to be a part of and to experience, and just to be in touch with, you know, other guys that I can trust and that I can count on, and men that I could call if I need support, or I'm having one of those days, where before men's work and before being in that community and getting to know men in a deeper way, I didn't have that as much, you know. I didn't have that kind of dropped in sort of sense with other people. And it's a really beautiful thing to, you know, more of a comfort being yourself, more acceptance for who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that allows people to be themselves more. They don't have to pretend that they've, you know, the fitting in's a big part of that. Like the container, or whatever you want to call it, that is found largely in men's group, or even if you've got just a leader that, you know, maybe you've got a walking group or whatever it is, but a leader is making sure that the people in the group are kind of adhering to some sort of framework that allow, you know, no one's shouting around their opinion too much, for example, or giving people advice when it's not asked for, because we all have our perspectives on things, but just little things like that can actually just allow everyone just to subtly just drop down and come into their heart space rather than living in their thoughts. And then the power within that, I always feel that just allows men to just be what they were born to be, which is at the roots of all humans, which is kindness, which is love, which is, you know, connection. Everyone wants to connect. Everyone wants to feel that. And I could look, you know, I could give examples of times where I've grown up where I've never felt safe. There's been very few spaces in my, you know, adolescence where I did feel safe. So I feel that once that space is there, it's like it only brings the goods, you know, for men.
Yeah, it certainly has a lot to offer.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you there.
Yeah, man. So do you feel, I mean, I feel like physical touch is so important for men, and the hugging of a man, like that's where I develop trust for someone, when I can actually feel their embrace, feel their presence, like someone's ability to connect on that level, and, you know, to look me in the eyes for more than a split second, you know. And is that a big component of the men's work that you've been in? And I mean, tell me a bit about your kind of journey towards men's work, because I know you worked in sales for a long period of time, but what was your first step towards doing this sort of work?
Well, my first step towards doing this sort of work was not out of intentionality to get involved and sit in other groups of men. You know, that was totally outside of my awareness. I had no idea that was really something I could do or should do or might benefit from. It wasn't a thought. So just to be clear, like I kind of got lucky and I stumbled upon this, and I've got lucky many times in my life, and I've had a lot of help. And the way that help showed up for me was that I was reading books, I was trying things out, I was taking risks in my life. And, you know, buying a book is not taking a risk, but doing things like maybe packing up and moving to the other side of the world and having a new experience and really trying to figure out what my purpose was and what I wanted to do. And, you know, like all young guys, trying to make it work, trying to gather some resources, get some stability, have a little bit of autonomy in your life so that you're free to make your own choices. And maybe you're not the slave of, a slave to a clock or punch card or that kind of thing. And you have a little bit more freedom. So for me, I got involved in men's work because Phil Misselberger, our founder, invited me to join a group that he wanted to run. He was running men's groups in the 90s, and he's been actually involved in men's work for a long time. But in 2015, he decided to reboot this previous group that he had been running called the Samurai Brotherhood. And based on what I know about that, it was about 12 to 15 men. So he starts this group up in his living room, and there was 6 of us there. And the community has grown immensely over the last 7 years. I believe we're now going into our 8th year, actually, this spring. And we're rebranding as the Arca Brotherhood. And there's a whole, story to that and significance. But for me personally, the point is that I was invited into this by Phil, and I was not in a good place in my life. I was kind of in one of those rock bottoms. I'd been taking chances, taking risks, tried marketing, tried sales, tried starting my own music management business. I was really taking shots at things and just exploring. And I felt like I hadn't really got anywhere I wanted to go, or I hadn't produced the results really that I wanted to see in my life. I'd certainly had some great experiences, but I was broke and didn't really have any direction. So that's important, right? I wasn't coming in as some wise sage that had it all figured out. I happened to have been working with Phil for 3 years, taking some of his workshops and trainings. He knew me and I trusted him, and he invited me. And that's really how all men come into this work, is that they're invited by a man that they know, sometimes someone they've known for a while, but at the very least, to get in, to say yes, to join the group, they got to trust the guy a little bit, and have some sense that he's well-intentioned and is looking out for their best interest. So that was me. So I joined that, quickly became a leader because the group grew quite quickly. And within a year, we had about 30 some odd men, and it was just too many men for one circle. So we split it up, and I ended up leading the first group. And now the community's grown to 500 men approximately, and we've got guys all over the world. Our headquarters is in Vancouver, BC, Canada. We have a number of in-person groups there, and we have several online groups that we call squads that men participated in the USA, Europe, Australia, and so on. And it's been just an incredible journey. I've certainly learned a lot about myself and a lot about leadership and how to solve certain problems and how to manage a growing organization, which, never done anything like that before, and just been kind of learning along the way. So there's a lot there, but my point is that I got started because I was invited. Someone drew me in. I was open and seeking support, and I was ready. And sometimes that's what people experience, is that when they're ready, the teacher arrives or the opportunity arrives, when they're really, really willing and open.
Yeah, you mentioned the rock bottom. Do you think in our human experience, like it's very it's important to say that we don't change things sometimes until they really, really go wrong and we don't have another choice. So knowing that, what are your thoughts on like catching, because the wisdom really is trying to help people, and spreading wisdom is trying to help people not make the same mistakes you made, or, not go to the depths that you didn't. And that's kind of how it really works, very simplified. But catching people before they hit that rock bottom moment, so they don't perhaps have to be there and go there where you once did. Do you feel like everyone needs to go through some sort of like dark night of the soul type situation? Or, I mean, of course, this isn't a truth. Like, of course, you don't have to. But what are your thoughts on that, and like hitting that rock bottom moment? And if you didn't, then would it have taken longer to kind of bounce back from something?
Well, I don't believe that you necessarily need a rock bottom moment to change your life. I think that most of us experience that, and there's certainly this has been well discussed and thought out and observed, which is that most people come into personal development from crisis, trauma, suffering, some kind. And I don't think that you need it, though. You can be for example, in a relationship, in a romantic relationship, and things are okay, and you're going through the motions, and it's not like it's not a toxic, abusive relationship. It's just kind of so, and everything's like, you might evaluate it at a 4 or 5 out of 10. It's okay, and that's all right. Many people are happy with that. But if you feel maybe a little bit of dissatisfaction or yearning, you don't have to wait for the wheels to totally fall off or to get to a really, really bad fight. You can pick up a book. You can go to couples therapy, even if the house isn't burning down. You can seek out wisdom and teachings. But the truth is, I think for many people, and at least in my experience, is that when you're when you're coming up in the world, especially for me, when I was like 25, 26 and trying to figure my life out, trying to figure out what my purpose was. And I think many men kind of have that same experience around that age, like Saturn's return, around thereabouts 20, 28, 29 years old. You don't typically have a lot of financial resources. And sometimes it's really hard to know where to start when you're looking for a guide or a teacher or a therapist. And if you're trying to put some scratch together, so to speak, trying to build your bankroll, and you don't have much, it's difficult to feel that freedom to invest, or just have the luxury to sit around and read a good book when you're worried about keeping your job, you're worried about paying the rent, and working together with your partner, or if you got kids or other dependents. So to me, it's kind of complicated, and I don't know exactly what the right thing is for everybody. But I got to say, if you don't like your situation, or you're struggling, or you're dissatisfied, take some chances in your life and take some risks and put yourself out there, because you're going to learn something from that experience. And I think that's how confidence is really built, is we put ourselves out there, we take a chance, we try something we haven't tried before. And if it doesn't work out, we don't go into the meaning making story that we are never going to get it done and we're not enough, and mom or dad was right, I'm just not smart enough, or those kids are right, I'm the bullies at school are right, I'm ugly, or I'm not strong enough, or whatever the story is, to not go into that and to take the empowered approach to say, okay, wow, it didn't work out for me, and I'm going to learn something from this, and okay, I'm going to try another way, or I'm going to try something else, and to just keep going like that. So I know that's a bit of a tangent on your original question, which I sometimes have the tendency to do, but
still good.
I think
it leads us into some good places. Yeah, what I'm getting, which has come up recently, probably for the first time ever, I've gave Tony Robbins the time of day, which sounds mad statement really, but I've thought, okay, I listened to him on Tom Bilyeu's podcast, and I was like, yeah, of course, every time he feels to me, it feels like I can't connect with him in a way. And I've always felt that, but I thought, okay, let's just do one of his courses. He's offering like a free breakthrough course in January. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go a couple of days. And one of the key things he's talking about quite a lot, and was in the podcast, is progress. And that whatever, and I'm like, progress. It's such a demonized word, really. To anyone that would consciously look at where we're at as a species, of this progress, this perpetual progress that we've got so caught up in. But really, it's kind of redefining what progress means to you. If you're doing something day by day, just a little bit, it doesn't have to be something like really huge, or it doesn't have to progress. And he literally said very clearly, happiness comes from progress, making progress. And I've always thought, if I'm looking back on myself every year and thinking, God, I was naive last year, or I didn't know much then, look what I know now. Like, that's going to be a perspective that I want to carry through, for the rest of my life. And that is progress, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what I want to talk about this, because it kind of feeds into this, the moment that you went and almost followed this is what I've gathered you're more passionate about than selling cars. And that moment that, because I know it was a kind of a steady progression, let's say, to doing what you're doing now. What was the big shift to make that change, do you think?
Well, the big shift to make that change, there's a couple of things. One, I was already in a men's group, and I was talking with people about my life. And some of the realities of my situation were kind of uncomfortable. And I wasn't in a great financial position. I was confused about a few things in terms of my direction. There was kind of a lack of clarity. So in my experience in those groups, developing myself as a leader, developing more self-acceptance and confidence, I began to see the light a little bit. They're like, oh, I could be a facilitator, and maybe I could be a couples therapist, or I could support people one-on-one, and that could be a great business for me, and it would be meaningful, and I would enjoy it, and I got a natural skill set there. So, just kind of seeing that and stepping into that and seeing that the possibility was there, and then talking about it a little bit. And some of the guys in the groups that I sat in were entrepreneurs. They ran their own businesses. They were restaurateurs or coaches themselves, or they ran a successful consulting business. And that, sitting with people like that, it makes you feel made me feel at least a little jealous, a little envious that, man, I would love to create that for myself. But it also gives you the sense that, wow, it's possible. Like, here I am sitting, I'm surrounded by all these guys who are kind of have a situation that I want to create for myself. And, it narrows the gap, I think, a little bit in terms of what's possible. And those men also provided me with some insights in terms of how I could get started, trying to simplify the process of getting from, A to Z. And that was helpful. Along the way, I had a few guys, raise their voice at me and ask me when I was going to do something about my situation, because I had complaints, I had criticism, I had all kinds of, frustrations. And when men care about you and they sit with you every week, they also, are tired to see you tired of seeing you suffer, honestly, and they're tired of hearing you complain. So often one of the questions you get asked is like, okay, I hear you, man, it's tough, but what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? And some of those conversations were more, I think, confronting or tense than others. But ultimately, it was just a loving, supportive message, even when it was brought with fire. And Mark Groves actually is one of the people that I saw at a social event and gathering. And he asked me, when I was finally going to do something and stop wasting my talent and do something that I cared about. And I actually committed to him that night that I would start a coaching website, and I did. And he had no intention of bringing me on the team or being a mentor to me or anything like that. It just happened 4 or 5 months later that came together. So that's what I mean is I have had help, I've had support, but part of that has been putting myself in the right situations and being open and vulnerable and looking for support, looking for help, looking for someone to say something that made sense to light a fire under my ass.
Yeah, it reminds me of Good Will Hunting, actually. Have you seen that film?
I have. Yeah, great film.
One of my favorite films. So there's a scene when can't remember the character names, but what is it? Matt Damon's talking to Ben Affleck, and he goes, every day I just pray that you're not going to answer the door and come to the laboring job that they do. He's like, I just pray, I just hope one day I'm going to turn up at your door and you're not going to be there because you have such talent and none of us have. And if you just continue to do what you're doing, you'll be wasting it. And it's like,
a great scene.
Yeah, he had that accountability and like that. Yeah, it's a powerful conversation for your friend who cares about you. Because what I think about, being a friend, like what's right for you is right for your friends. There's no argument with that. I always feel like even if it's right for you to, not meet up with them or not see your friends for 6 months because you're working on something that's right for you, it's going to be right for them in the long term. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the relationship stuff and how's that going? How are you navigating working with couples and holding that space? Has that been more challenging than you anticipated? Was it kind of something you always knew how to? Was it something you were giving to friends advice and everyone was telling you should help others do this?
Well, the couples work is very engaging and interesting, and I really like it. So to me, it actually might be the most challenging thing that I do, but it is certainly, the most engaging. And it's a really, really fulfilling experience for me to be sharing insights about success in relationship and helping couples reduce the reactivity in their dynamic in their relationship, to learn new techniques for listening and communicating and making a difference for people in that way. And I think, we teach what, we need to learn sometimes. And I've certainly had a number of challenges in my relationships over the years, which could have been a lack of mindfulness on my part, or not knowing how to work through something, or actually having a perspective in my mind or paradigm about relationships that just didn't work, wasn't really an empowered perspective. And we're all propagandized about love by culture, by movies and songs and cinema and our own family systems, to believe that maybe love should be easy, and it's a fit, it's going to be a honeymoon dream, and this person is going to fulfill all of your needs, and once you get married, it's going to be happily ever after. And then you've made it, right? Once you meet the person, once you meet your soulmate, you get married, then you just get to live your life and enjoy things. And my experience is that relationships are hard. And I it's certainly a pleasure to be in one because there's so many wonderful things that it brings to my life, but relationships are hard. And I think validating that for people and validating the experience that couples are having through the pandemic, especially, but just in general, relationships are tough because intimacy is a trauma trigger, as Terry Real would say, and it really brings up all of our stuff. We get close with another person, and there's a whole new world of things that are activated. So I love couples work, and to me, it's I don't want to say easy, but it's easy for me to show up. I really love that and care about that. And I know some therapists and facilitators that don't want to work with couples and have decided they never will. So it's interesting that we've all got something that we love, something that we want to focus on. And for me right now, couples work is that thing.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel the most challenging thing is couples do deal with this? Is it how to navigate the conflict that they have? Is it intimacy? What are some of the biggest things that couples do kind of tackle with?
Well, as my mentor would say, the most dangerous thing that we do is talk. And Harville Hendricks has a school basically called Safe Conversations, and Harville and Helen, as many people know them, authors of Getting the Love You Want, have a school that they founded called Imago Relationships International, which teaches people about some of these skill sets and techniques in relationship. But going back to the original question, one of the most difficult things that people struggle with is actually communication. And I think that is in romantic relationships, but also in the world, between countries and world leaders, communication is a huge issue. But for romantic partners, what tends to happen is that people monologue with each other. So they talk at one another. And what tends to happen is that one person is talking at the other, and it creates a little bit of a power imbalance, and also activates parts of our physiology that get defensive and can get reactive and feel attacked, and all kinds of things that go on there, which can create a tennis match back and forth of highly reactive behavior or defensive comments. And that does not really facilitate or create a safe environment for couples. So one of the first opportunities that couples have is to learn more about safe conversations, learn more about the Imago dialogue process. And by learning about it, it doesn't necessarily immediately solve the problems, but without learning how to have safe conversations, it's very difficult to transcend some of the issues that people experience in their partnership.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, again, going back to being aware could be the biggest thing here. And obviously seeking help if you feel like you need it and you can't do it yourself. I mean, the relationship being the biggest mirror of all the stuff, all the things in your mind and your life that you're not free, and you don't, when I think of a trigger, it's showing me something that isn't allowing me to be free. It's kind of tying me down to something, or an idea I've got, or a story I've got about something. So when me and my partner have conflict, generally I'll get triggered at something she says, and if I don't respond in a way that's actually communicating that first, it's kind of like the conversation just never gets to the point of of healing, I guess. So communicating, one thing I've learned is communicating what is relevant for you right now over giving your most power away, which is also something I'd like to get into about, the mindset of this is happening for me right now, and it's not on you, even though you're the one who said this about me. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And that's sort of what I'm talking about, in the way that if I, for example, I'm talking for minutes at my partner, just, this, that, you always do this, you never do that, blah, 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 blah. I'm in that monologue mode. And what Imago dialogue and, the safe conversations technique teaches is to slow things down a little bit and actually become better listeners and bring more equality to these conversations, so that there's really a sense of engagement and presence and mutual involvement, and there isn't shaming, blaming, criticism, attacking of one another, and gives people an opportunity to empathize with their partner's experience without making it all about them or taking it personally. And so a lot of this boils down to, not taking it personally, not making it all about you, being mindful and having some practical tools you can use to manage triggers and activations. But what's interesting is that for some people, even having the tools, even having the trainings, you're going to find that there are moments in your relationship, next levels you get to, or places you get to, where your body remembers what your mind forgets, and something happens, somebody says something, and it activates and triggers a part of you that maybe there is some unresolved trauma, or there is something unhealed. And in that moment, someone can take off like a rocket, or they can go really, really, deep into that experience. It's this automatic, unconscious happening. And partners need to be able to work together on that, and to try to also bring some trauma-informed awareness to what might be happening. So one of those things that goes on for people is, for example, you might say to your partner that, oh, I'd like to go out for dinner on Friday night with the guys from work. And, I don't think we have anything planned. So just want to make sure that works for you, and put it in the calendar. And then your partner goes, boom, into some kind of escalated or intense response. And it could be a shutdown. It could be a maximizing type response. They're upset that they're not spending Friday night with you. But as the person who's just trying to make plans with their friends, anytime you notice your partner responding in a way that doesn't make sense to you, especially when the as I like to say, the volume of the song doesn't match the genre, it's like, this is turned up way too loud for this scene and setting. What's going on here? It's so difficult to be curious, but that's one of the things that we need to try to do, is to say, whoa, okay, I'm noticing that this response somehow doesn't match the conversation for me. I'm missing something. I'm missing some details. I'm not going to take this personally, and I'm going to get curious here about what's coming up from my partner. Now, there's a whole spectrum and range of potentialities there, and techniques and things that you can do. But my point is there are often things that are, outside of our own awareness about our partner, and our body and mind has not experienced their trauma. We have not been through what they've been through. And it's really difficult to relate. Couples find themselves sometimes on, two sides of the same mountain with a different scene and setting. There's a river and a sunset, and over here it's rock and rubble, and it's dark because there's no light on the side of the mountain. And they say, no, this is terrible over here. I don't like it. And the other person saying, no, it's fantastic. This is exactly what I want. And you find that about pretty much every issue in relationship, which has a lot to do with the way people come out of childhood. One person comes out of childhood wanting freedom, and the other person generally wants commitment, stability. And those two people find each other and get into a power struggle, generally about what's right and how things ought to be. And we could spend a lot of time trying to convince our partner that we see the world in the right way, and that they should join the club. And until they do, we won't be happy.
It's bang on, isn't it? And relating to what you said at the start of the conversation. Well, actually, I was having a conversation with a lady called Josie. The podcast will be already out, and she was talking this way about our children and the children that we raise, and not taking things personally and not making it about you or the event. And one thing me and my partner try and focus on is it's never about the event. There's, if it's something that's just, I'd say justified, but it's like heightened, this on another day or a different time or somewhere else wouldn't be like this. So we try and say it's never about the event. If we're disagreeing on something, it's not really about that. It's our needs not being met, or it's the way we're seeing the world, which we're not agreeing on. So what are some things I sometimes think that is what you've alluded to. It's like one of the biggest things for couples. And I think what makes it even harder is we are sold this idea of what a relationship is, and we carry that story around, or it shouldn't be like this, or it should be easier, or it's it shouldn't be this hard. And who's to say that is true? For you, it could be that there are certain things in your life that you're carrying from how you were raised as children, that this partner that you're with now is not quite just letting be or accepting, and they're challenging that. So yeah, the story that we carry into it, I feel like is can be really detrimental to how we navigate through. So just accepting that this is challenging sometimes, and how we kind of work through that in agreement, I guess, of like what needs to be done. Would you say that creating a safe space to return to things is sometimes the most effective solution to navigating conflict? Or, well, obviously if you can't settle or resonate in that moment, is that the only thing to do, I guess?
Well, one of the big challenges in relationships are really about boundaries. And so this new kind of approach that I'm talking about here to relationships, which isn't entirely new. People have been talking about this for the better part of 50 years. And there's certainly some big insights that have come from the world of Imago and Harville and Helen's work and the Gottmans and so on. But one of the big things is about boundaries. So it's kind of like my mentor describes it as psychic potty training, right? So at some point in our lives, when we pop out into this world, we go wherever we want, right? Like right now, if I asked you to piss your pants, you wouldn't do it, because you have some sense of boundaries around that. You were taught by the family system that actually there's a special room you go to and there's a place you do it. And then when you're done, you clean up after yourself and it's ready for the next person. And in relationship, we need to learn that just because we want to go right now doesn't mean it's the right time to do it. Doesn't mean we get the right space and the right setting to proverbially shit all over the living room. And couples need to learn how to protect that space between each other, which is really where the relationship exists. So if anytime something bothers me, I just want to talk about it right then and there. I don't know how to contain my experience. I don't know how to back off a little bit, or I don't know how to say, hey, I really want to talk with you. And I felt really frustrated this morning. Is now a good time to talk through that? To say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility that I want to talk. I'm going to take responsibility that I was upset. And I'm also going to give consent to my partner to say, is now a good time? And give them permission to say no. And if they say no, I'm not going to have a meltdown, but we're going to make an agreement that, okay, it's not now, but in an hour, or should we do it after dinner? Or how about tomorrow morning? Generally within 24 hours, we make a commitment, we prioritize repair, we prioritize having a conversation that one of us wants to have. And ultimately, each partner finds that there's something else that they want to communicate, or the partner that's upset will say their piece and the other person doesn't have nothing to say. They usually have their own side of the story to contribute, or they apologize, or whatever it is. So my point is that boundaries are important. If we're just kind of floating through our relationship and we believe that everything's about us and that our partner doesn't have their own reality and that they're not their own person, it creates a lot of challenges. So that's one of the first things that's really important. And when couples learn to make agreements like that, you learn really how to honor yourself too. You learn to say, am I available right now? Or, I'm noticing that I'm not available. Like that's actually a really important attunement, because your partner can say, hey, I'd like to talk. Is now a good time? You can say, oh, yeah. Like out of anxiety, but your mind is in the TV show or the football game or your work emails, and you're not really present, So we've got to find ways to show up for our partners and ways to contain our experience that, also honors the importance and the significance and the sacredness of our experience, but of our relationship. That if I have something important to say, something really big coming up for me, and this is a significant issue, and I'm going to bring it to you, I better make sure that it's a good time, because this is so important to me. I don't just want to, have it out in the middle of the kitchen and start talking at you and then feel rejected because you were unavailable and I didn't ask. And it's a really, really common thing. And most couples can relate to that and see, oh yeah, like basically every week there's something like that where I think it's a good time to talk. And I forget that my partner has their own reality from mine, and their own priorities.
Yeah. So I'm learning some things. This is speaking to me. And how, I mean, when you start to discover these and seek these new different ways of learning and growing in a relationship, it might sound a bit foreign to your partner that you start shouting around new boundaries and then they've been with you for years, is that how would someone navigate that? Obviously it is about the communication, even if you enter that with, I haven't set any boundaries before, but I think I need some, etc. But is there any way to kind of navigate that?
Well, this kind of work, especially transforming or changing a relationship, or transforming patterns in a relationship, is hard work, and it's not easy. And so, if you're that kind of brave, courageous person who's willing to have difficult conversations and is willing to approach these vulnerable subjects, then I say, go for it. And even if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh yeah, I do want to talk to my partner about this, but they don't know anything about Imago and they haven't listened to this podcast, that's a good place to start. Is that, honey, I was listening to this podcast today and they were talking about this interesting way to really honor each other's boundaries, and I was wondering if we could talk about that a little bit, if now's a good time, or I'd love to share this with you. Can we listen to it together? To bring your partner in on what your intention is. What is it you're trying to co-create together? If you just come in and start, nope, oh, you're violating my boundary. Say, wait, what? Like, what's going on? Are you okay? But it's really about sharing more about what's going on. Is there something hurtful that's happening? Is there the fear that you have? Is there something you need right now? And giving your partner that insight and perspective into who you are and what's important. So even sharing a good book or a podcast or a meme on Instagram, sometimes partners will take it personally and make it mean something about them, that their one partner is sharing relationship advice with the other all the time. And it's important that couples learn how to dialogue about that too, about these little irritations or annoyances or hurts that they have. In the Imago dialogue process, there's essentially 3 questions. And whether you ever do couples therapy or whether your partner knows anything about Imago, you can use these yourself, and you can process yourself in this way. So when you feel upset in your relationship, you feel triggered or bothered or hurt, three great questions to ask yourself are, what hurts me about this? What am I afraid of? And what does this remind me of from childhood? And, ultimately, when you share that with your partner, there's really kind of a restoration of empathy, because they understand more about where your hurt and wounding, comes from. But only just for yourself, actually, to be able to put that down, to acknowledge that, and to process yourself as an individual brings often quite a bit of relief and a lot of clarity as to, oh yeah, yeah, this hurts, and I do have this fear, and there is this painful memory associated with it. And usually, 99% of the time, there is a painful memory associated with our triggers.
Yeah. Sorry, you going to say something?
No, those are just 3 the questions that are part of Imago dialogue process. And, if you were to follow that up with anything, it might be, what do I need right now? What is it that I need right now? Can I give that to myself? And if I don't know how, okay, maybe ask for support, or maybe there's something I need to ask for from my partner or from this other person in my life.
Yeah.
That's
one thing we've developed and started to introduce is the question, okay, what do you need? What do you need right now? Yeah. How can I help?
Yeah. And
it does just kind of cut through the atmosphere, I guess. It cuts through the tension that we feel.
Yeah.
could you speak to this a little bit about being maybe ready for a relationship, or knowing that you can't work through something in a relationship when perhaps you don't feel safe, or you're not getting exactly your needs met or your boundaries met by your partner, but then understanding whether this is perfect right now because you're shining a light on the things I need to work through, that versus I can't work through this in this space, so I'm getting triggered daily, or quite constant, and it's my body, my nervous system is just in a more of a stress state, moving through that, how to kind of navigate that, I guess. Not to say that you can't go outside of the confines of what a relationship is and take some time for yourself and that.
Well, it's a complicated question to answer because there's so many nuances to that.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone starts in a relationship. Everybody starts in love. Okay, so we all typically come into this, what is the honeymoon phase. We love this person. There's a sense of oneness. We have all these things in common. And the sex is great, and the chemistry, and we just, we want to see them all the time. We can't wait to hear from them. And every relationship moves through that phase. Because it is a phase, it ends, and into a power struggle of some kind. And that power struggle is often about the individual's perspectives in the world and believing that they know what's right for their partner, or one person believing that their partner knows everything that's right for them. Just tell me how I should be. And there's a legitimate struggle for power in the relationship. And if couples can't work through that, sometimes they move into a phase that's like coping. And coping can mean I play golf 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, and try to stay out of the house and away from my partner as much as possible. Or I just work all the time and I never talk through anything with my partner. Or, I watch 8 hours of TV a day, or whatever it is. People can get into drugs, they can get into affairs, they can get into all kinds of different things to kind of cope with some of the dissatisfaction and hurt they experience in their relationship. Some people cope in violent, abusive ways, physically, emotionally abusive ways. There's all kinds of toxic behavior that can go on to try and get our partner to be who we want them to be, or to avoid the pain of being with them in some capacity. So that's kind of complicated. My point is, we start in love, we move into the power struggle, and about half of people, 50% of people, exist in a relationship that's essentially just coping with the situation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think what you described there, maybe not the extremes of the violence and the 8 hours of TV a day, but that is most people, I believe. They're operating on that symptom relief kind of level. They kind of know something's not really going quite well, but it causes certain symptoms which they deal with in ways which aren't really conducive to helping the problem that exists there.
So in my mind, I would say, 50% of people live in that coping space. Mm-hmm. And the other 50%, I would break up into 45% of people leave their relationship and they say, God, this doesn't work. This person's my nightmare. They cause all this pain in my life. And I got to get out, and I'm going to find someone to fall in love with again. And I'm going to find someone to meet my needs and really be in a relationship that I like. And sometimes that's the right thing to do. Sometimes there are, and if you're in an abusive or toxic relationship, especially abusive, you should get out. I never recommend people stay. Because no one deserves to be in a circumstance like that. But there are so many issues that happen in our relationships that make us fear that our partner is, the source of our pain instead of our pleasure. We project that they are. We behave in a way that elicits an unwanted response from them. And there are these big opportunities for couples to go a little bit deeper about what's really going on. So in terms of, whether you're single and it's appropriate for you to get into a relationship or not, the truth is look, we're all wounded in relationships, often in childhood. And, we can also experience deep and profound healing in our relationships. And we can resolve a lot of these things that, have gone on in our lives by learning and practicing and, embodying a new understanding practicing this stuff with our partner. And we can do that on our own. I think that relationships are extremely confronting because there's basically this unyielding mirror that is constantly reflecting back, shadowy stuff about yourself. And the fact that you, as much as you want to be a person who's joyful and happy and loving life, that, man, you got triggers and you got some of your own stuff going on. And for me personally, I like to think that, oh yeah, all good, life's good, I'm good, no issues. And then my partner knows how to just say something, and she's not doing it intentionally, but she might say something in the right way at the right time, and I can just, all of a sudden I'm triggered, I'm activated. So and we don't want to feel that way. We don't want to feel dissatisfaction. We don't want to feel upset in our relationship. No one's aspiring to get that, but it's part of the journey. And that experience is not happening for you or me or anyone listening to this to relive the nightmare or to, re-experience the pain of their childhood situation. It's happening as a growth opportunity. And if you've been in a relationship long enough, you might even want to take on the phrase AFGO, another fucking growth opportunity, because they happen all the time. Conflict is an opportunity for growth. And all relationships, all healthy relationships, are going to have some form of conflict. So it's really about looking for those opportunities. And it does take a little bit of practice. And sometimes you need a really good guide. I would argue to have a thriving relationship, you need some community. You need maybe a great therapist or coach or a great resource, and other couples, who are walking the path and trying to practice some principles of conscious relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that. Articulated it beautifully. I think enter the mindset of growth versus fixed here, because any opportunity, I love to speak to that, which is a mindset. Life's happening for me, not to me. Now, that can be one of the biggest shifts anyone can ever make, because it's the Viktor Frankl, if you, I guess, there's endure any why to do any how. If you've got a why because you love this person, perhaps, then you can endure any how to get there. But the bigger than that is that it's not the experience itself, it's your thoughts about it, which speaks to that quote kind of thing. So yeah, the growth opportunity and looking for these opportunities to grow, which can be so hard to even understand, because we feel like we have no control over what someone says, or that thing that they say is producing something within me. If they didn't say it, then I wouldn't have felt that. When was the first time that you understood that in a way which really helped yourself?
Well, I just want to touch on something because I'm familiar with Tony Robbins' work, and the sort of the phrase, I thought, is this happening? This is happening for me, for my growth, for my development, and not to me. And there's a real important distinction in that about sort of a victim mindset and an empowered mindset. But what we're learning, and I think what a lot of people are discovering, is that, especially with COVID, is there's lots of wonderful things that have come out of COVID for individuals. Some people might feel that, man, they finally got some time to make the changes in their life that they needed to, or they had a reset, or the isolation motivated them to make some change in their life. But there's a lot of people that have experienced loss and heartbreak and all kinds of difficulties, and we're certainly not out of this yet. But what I'm saying is that, before we reframe on positive thinking, or before we say, I'm going to replace this negative thought with a positive one, there is something important that's part of that. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have the nuance here, we can get into toxic positivity land. I do believe that there are some things that happen in life that are tragic and heartbreaking and, unnecessary. It's like, did you really need to have that experience? Or is that just one of the darker parts of reality of being on Earth? So a couple of great questions here is like, is there something that this experience is trying to show me or teach me? It's maybe like looking for wisdom, but can I accept the reality of this? Can I show some compassion to myself? Are there things I need to process related to this experience? Is this something that I need to be more positive about? Or is there just some action I need to take? And sometimes there's a middle ground of like an adaptive thought versus a really positive one. This is, like when we just jump to this is happening for me, I think we miss a little bit of an important step, and we can end up kind of bypassing, part of our experience. So I just wanted to say that because I just need to get that out of my brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is an important part. I mean, with any kind of couple of words or quotes or these things that get thrown around and bandied around so much, they are quite interpretive, I guess. But for me, it will be like a way of seeing the world, which, is what you're saying too. But there is a big part of that, being ultimately positive about everything that's happening to you, because it's happening for you, can allow you to, park certain things that are part of the experience and that you are just, it's happening for me, so I don't have to look at it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than, I don't want this to happen again. Like, I can see it in a positive way because I can use it as an opportunity. And that probably speaks to it a bit better, using the thing as an opportunity rather than letting it use you in a certain way,
Yeah. I just think that some wisdom is not always totally uplifting or inspiring. Some wisdom is like heavy, like we have grief about things. People have grief about some of the losses they've experienced in COVID, loss of lifestyle, unexpected change, out of control, not going the way they wanted to, the government making decisions that don't necessarily fit or align with individual perspectives, other people making decisions for us about what we ought to do. And so, everyone's going to do with this what they will. And I notice opportunities all the time about the way that I think about things, or a limiting belief might creep in because you're going to get sick, folks. It's time to get sick. It's that time and you're going to get it, and better be worried about that. The narrative sometimes tells us how we ought to be. So there's always ways to be mindful about that and notice what we're taking on. I see that for myself, at least, that I can feel frustrated with some of the limitations that are imposed, the loopholes that you got to jump through to go out to dinner or this or that. And, I think that gratitude is certainly, an important thing, but there's also just a holding space for, oh yeah, this is not ideal, or this isn't what I want.
Do you feel that's part of it, is that evil, or like the darkness of us as humans, as living things, the darkness that exists within, like just being I don't want to say allowed, but it's being expressed, in certain areas, within certain people?
Well, in terms of this realm that we're in, and whether it's dark or light or what's the predominant energy, there's a whole rabbit hole we can go down. But I think it's contrasts, and it's the spectrum. So when we have joy and happiness and levity and uplifting feelings and orgasms and all these things in our relationship, we know the beauty in that. We know just the wonder in that, because we also know the days where we didn't have a partner, we were alone, or the days it was really hard and we were fighting. So we need the contrast of experience to be able to have, the sweetness and the spice and the light and the dark.
So this is a good time to introduce perhaps what your thoughts on like human suffering and creating your own suffering, which I think is an interesting one, because I could see that I could be open to that kind of idea that we need to create some sort of, whether it's a daily routine or something within our week that is really hard to do. It's going to create those responses to the stressor, and it's going to build our resilience to things so that can manifest in our job, in our relationship. What do you think about that, and creating your own stress to kind of grow from it? Like the Joe Rogan kind of do something very challenging, and then you're going to feel the benefits from that, because if you don't create that stress, then life will do that for you, kind of thing.
Well, I think that, life does create all kinds of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, we're in an amazing time where we have access to information at our fingertips, and we can, at a click of a button, basically have people deliver things to our front door for us. Pretty much anything now. I mean, they'll even come fill up gas in your driveway now. It's like you don't
Really?
have to go anywhere. It's kind of amazing. But the point is, it's also a more complicated time. Like, it's not as simple as chop wood, carry water. And there's some wonderful things about that, but we also have some unique challenges. So I think, how you start your day is big. I think routines are really helpful for people. But what I've noticed is that everyone has a different archetype and blueprint and energy signature, that they have their own way of going about things. They have these parts of their character that benefit from different types of experiences. Novelty is certainly something we all enjoy, having a new experience. Or I think that we all enjoy that. I certainly do. But I'm also the kind of person that can have the same thing at the same time, every day. I don't mind the routine. It actually keeps a sort of a structure and a balance to my life. So I think this ties into the thing that, you mentioned Tony talking about, which is like, how do we feel satisfaction in life? And what is that satisfaction about? Well, to a large degree, it's about progress. It's about making some progress. So, for example, I started playing pickleball this year, which is sort of a variation of badminton, tennis, and ping pong. I don't know if you've ever seen it played.
Yeah. I have, yeah. I've been curious because I've heard it being thrown around a few times. Aubrey Marcus was the first person, but it seems to be gaining some traction in the world of sports, I think.
It is, for sure. It's definitely growing enormously in America. But my point is to try something new. And, it's not as intense as running a marathon or achieving pull-up world record. But my point is I'm out there playing, learning, and progressing. And I am putting some stress on my body in the way that I'm exerting effort, and I'm breathing, and I'm sweating, and putting some strain on my hips. So I don't think that you need to necessarily attempt to run an Ironman every day to feel some progress in your life, but it's just really to feel engaged in something, to have some pursuits and passions and interests and things that you can feel that progression and that engagement and that sense of, play, which is such an important part of feeling alive. So, I my approach to that is really a little bit different. So in terms of relationships, Harville Hendricks likes to say couples need two things: safety and aliveness. And when you say that, a lot of people don't really know what the breakdown is of safety. What are the archetypes, or what are the strategies, or what are the principles here of these things? And for aliveness, playfulness is huge. Playfulness, passion, purpose, sense of presence. And these are things that I get from being engaged in, whether it's tennis or pickleball or spike ball or going for a jog. There is a sense of play to it, presence, passion as you're engaged. And so I think that for all of us, no matter what route you take, and I said this on Ben's podcast because I've read David Goggins' book and listening to David actually on, I think the first Joe Rogan episode he was on inspired me to sign up and run my first marathon. And that was a great experience. I learned a lot. But what I also learned is that, there's a limit to how much stress you can put on your body before, it breaks down in certain scenarios, in certain ways. And so I think that longevity is something we all want. We want to live long, healthy lives. We're flexible and resilient and, not maybe, for example, in a wheelchair at 60 and unable to do things or walk or hike. And I think those things are more important than going for a world record every day. So it's kind of like be able to show up in your life in a way that is consistent. And whatever that means for you, even if it just means getting up and going for a walk for 30 minutes in the morning.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is some key insights to sustainable and longevity in what we do, and making things a bit not creating stress too intentionally to then almost lose sight of the thing you're creating stress for, kind of thing. Because a lot can come from that. I mean, I dabbled in, I don't know if you have CrossFit in Canada, right? Yeah. So for me, that was too intense. It was like, right, what am I doing here? What's the why here? And it was just such a stressful environment that I was pushed almost without my control of what I wanted to be pushed in that room. And it was all or nothing. You can't just, have an easy session. It's all or nothing. And out of respect for everyone in the room, I wanted to show up in that way, but it was just too much. It was just too much on my body. Didn't think it was doing me that much good.
Yeah, I got into CrossFit for several years, and it became almost addicting, because, just like you get into running or these things, you get the high from it and you feel really good after, and you feel alive. And, to this point Joe was making from the quote you used, that you get up in the morning at 6 or 7 and have your workout, and you feel like you've moved a mountain before you've even done anything, to some degree, before you've gone to work, before you've made any progress in other areas of your life. And there's a really great feeling associated with that. There's a sense of capacity and capability and strength, and I think those are really important things for people to feel. But I also know that you don't necessarily have to join the CrossFit and do the WODs 5-6 days a week in order to get it. I have some nagging injuries from that experience with my shoulders, from just the intensity of repetition and the AMRAPs and so on.
Yeah, man. Good place to leave it, I think. Do you want to share anything, anything that's resonated with you throughout the conversation, or something you want to bring into the kind of conclusion of this? Any advice?
No, I appreciate you having me on here and asking some great questions and giving me a chance to contribute to your podcast. So thank you for that. And if people want to reach out to me or find me online, you can find me at Nick Solaczek on Instagram, or nicksolaczek.com. And Chris, I'm sure you put those links in there for people. And for any of the men listening, I'll be running a relationship mastermind this spring with Ben Groskey from Evolving Man. It's going to be a men's only relationship mastermind, about 8 to 10 weeks long. And we'll have some details coming out mid-February about that.
Yeah, nice. Lovely. I think you're great. And I think there's lots of, the conversations took many turns, and that makes for the best conversation kind of thing. It's great. It's good to know more about you, and definitely what the movement of the brotherhood over in that part of the world. I think it's rippling through in lots of other spaces. I'm a part of Man Talks actually with Connor, which I didn't associate you guys with that. I think is is Ben a part of the community or used to be?
Well, I'm not sure what Ben's affiliation with him is now. He was helping run one of the online forums for a little bit and
Yeah.
moderate and give some guidance. I don't know if Connor was born in Vancouver, but he was out here for a long time. So I'm familiar with Man Talks and had a chance to speak at one of their events. Great organization. And Connor's doing great work there as well.
Yeah, he is, man. So yeah, lovely. Thanks. Appreciate your time, man. It's been great.
Okay, Chris, thanks for having me.